Hello viewers, good morning to all. Welcome to the new session of our e-learning class. I am Rashmi Ranjan Mishra, HOD of Department of BBA, UN Autonomous College of Science and Technology. Today I am going to discuss relating to business and corporate law. So on today's discussion, we are going to discuss relating to free consent, which is one of the essential element of a valid contract. So what is that free consent and what are the grounds when the consent is said to free, that we will discuss one by one. So listen carefully and watch my video. So first we have to discuss what do mean by free consent. We already discussed in our essentials of a valid contract that to create a valid contract, the consent between the parties must have to free. If the consent is not free, in that case the contract is not a valid contract. So to be a valid contract, the opinion between all the parties must have to free, and that is called as free consent. So requirement of a free consent is there should be consent. The second one is the consent must be free. That means the opinion between the parties is said as consent, and when the consent or the opinion between the parties is free, that is called as a free consent. So to be a free consent, there must be two requirements. That means the first one is there should be a consent, and the second one is the consent should be free or must be free. So now we are going to discuss what do you mean by consent. What is the definition of consent? Section 13 defines consent as two or more persons are said to consent when they agree upon the same thing in the same sense. That means consent is said as the opinion between the parties. So when two or more than two persons are agree upon the same thing on the same sense, that is called as consent. That means what we can say that consciousness ad idem, that means the minds of both the parties must be at the same time and at the same sense. So when the minds of both the parties must be upon the same thing in the same sense, in that case that will be called as consciousness ad idem, and in that case the consent is said to be free. So the opinion between the parties when they agree upon the same thing in the same sense, that is called as consent. Then now we can define what is free consent. The free consent that is defined under section 14 of Indian Contract Act. Section 14 defines as consent is said to be free when it is not caused by coercion, second one is undue influence, third one is fraud, then fourth one is misrepresentation, then the fifth one is mistake. So these are the grounds. When it is not caused by these grounds, in that case the consent between the parties is said to be as free consent. So the coercion that is defined under section 15, undue influence that is defined under section 16, then fraud that is defined under section 17, misrepresentation that is defined under section 18, then mistake that is defined under section 20, 21 and 22. So on today's discussion we will be discussed only two parts, that is coercion and the second one is undue influence. In our next class we will discuss the other parts, that is fraud, misrepresentation and mistake. So what is coercion and what is undue influence, now we are going to discuss that. So in our next slide, the coercion that is defined. In simple words, coercion means forcible compelling a person to enter into a contract. So when one party force other party to enter into a contract or to make an agreement with that party, then in that case that is called as coercion. So when forcible compelling a person to enter into a contract by another party, then we can say that is a case of coercion. So there is one example. X threatened to kidnap Y's son if he does not lend rupees 50,000 to Z, and Y agrees to lend the amount to Z, though the coercion proceeds from X against Y's son, yet the agreement is entered under the coercion. So here X forcible compel to Y, that means you must have to pay 50,000 to Z. If you will not pay rupees 50,000 to Z, then in that case I will kidnap your son. So by threatening from X or by listening that type of word from X, Y forcibly gives 50,000 to Z, and this is a case of coercion, and this coercion proceeds from X against Y's son. Y thinks that if I will not pay rupees 50,000 to Z, in that case my son will be kidnapped by X. So that agreement is formed between X and Y Y by threatening pay rupees 50,000 to Z, and this is a case of coercion as the agreement is formed between X and Y, but this is not called as a valid contract, and in this case the consent from Y is not said to be free because X threatening Y to pay 50,000, if will not pay 50,000 then I will kidnap your son. So the agreement is formed, and that agreement is formed by way of a coercion. So there is one definition mentioned under section 15 of Indian Contract Act. Section 15 defines coercion as coercion means committing or threatening to commit any act forbidden by Indian Penal Code or unlawful detaining or threatening to detain any property to the prejudice of any person, whatever with the intention of causing any person to enter into an agreement. So section 15 defines that coercion means committing or threatening to commit any act. That means if a person commits any type of a mistake or threatening to commit any type of act, and that type of activities which is prohibited by Indian Penal Code, either a case of unlawful detaining or threatening to detain any property, whatever may be the intention, whatever may be the prejudice of that any person, the intention of causing any person to enter into an agreement, that is a case of a coercion. So this is one example. The picture shows the example of coercion. Here this person threatens this person to make any type of agreement where the consent of this person is not said to be free, and by threatening from this person the other person agrees or enters into an agreement, and the agreement is I want your job now. So this person said that I want your job, and this person forcibly compelling the another person to enter into this agreement, and by threatening or listening from a type of word from this person, the other person enters into an agreement, and that is called as a coercion. So when this type of agreement is formed and the consent is not said to be free, in that case the contract is called as not a valid contract. So when consent is obtained by coercion, what is the effect? Committing or threatening to commit any act forbidden by Indian Penal Code. That means X threatens to kill Y if the latter does not agree to sell his diamond ring for rupees 1500. So this is another example. Here X threatens to kill Y. That means if you will not sell your diamond ring for rupees only 1500, then I must kill you. And this type of a threatening is made from X and Y. By hearing this type of a threatening word, agree and enters into the agreement. So threatening to kill is forbidden by Indian Penal Code. So that means when any type of agreement is made, that agreement is prohibited or forbidden by Indian Penal Code, that is called as coercion, or the consent is not said to be free. So here the threatening to kill, and which is prohibited or forbidden by the Indian Penal Code. So what is the effect of coercion? That means when consent to an agreement is obtained by coercion, that means the consent is not said to be free. What is the result or what is the effect? The consequences or effect of coercion. The contract is voidable. That means when consent to an agreement is obtained by coercion, the effect or the contract is called as a voidable. That means at the time of entering into the contract created, but the latter moment the person who enters into the contract by forcibly, he or she can compel with proper justice in the court of law, and that person can also be discharged from that and get the benefit. Any benefit has to restored back. And if the agreed party does not opt to set aside the contract, it works as a valid contract, and does threat to commit suicide amount to coercion S. Commit to suicide that leads to or threatening to commit suicide is also one type of coercion. Then the second part, that is relating to undue influence. So when there is a case of undue influence, in that case the consent is not said to be free, and the contract formed between the parties or agreement between the parties which is obtained by way of undue influence is not called as a valid contract. So what is undue influence and what are the grounds? There is a case of undue influence that we will discuss. The strong mind overpower the weak mind of a person and induces him to do which he would not have done if he left to his own judgment. It is a kind of a mental coercion. So undue influence means one party who is in a superior position wants to dominate the inferior party and take the advantages by using his dominant power. That is a case of undue influence. The presence of undue influence at the time of a contract has to be proved by the party alleging that undue influence existed. So there is one definition given under section 16 of the Indian Contract Act of undue influence. Section 16 defines a contract is said to be induced by undue influence where the relation between the parties are such that one of the party is in a position to dominate the will of the other and by using that dominant power to obtain the unfair advantages of the other. So the superior party must uses his dominant power over the inferior party and wants to dominate the will of the inferior party and by using his dominant power to obtain the unfair advantages over the other. So that is a case of undue influence. So what are the grounds when a person is to be in a position to dominate the will of the another person? That means where a person holds a real or apparent authority over the other, that is a case of using the dominant power. That means a case of a master and a servant. So when master uses his dominant power over his servant, that is called as a undue influence. Money lender and borrower, when these parties, the money lender who wants to dominate the borrower, in that case also that is a case of undue influence. The police officer and the accused person, when police officer uses his dominant power over the accused person, that is also case of undue influence. Income tax officer and assessee, when the income tax officer uses his dominant power over the assessee, that is also case of undue influence. So these are the various grounds where that seems to be as a undue influence. Then the second ground, where a person stands in a fiduciary relationship over the other and the relationship of a trust and confidence. That means father and son, advocate and client, doctor and patient. These are the some of the grounds where that seems to be as fiduciary relation over one party with the other party, and that type of a relationship is of trust and confidence. The third ground, where a party to a contract is a person of a mental distress. So if any party is in a position of a mental distress, in that case the other party uses his dominant power and by using his dominant power to obtain the unfair advantages. That means when a person's mental capacity is temporarily or permanently affected due to advanced age or mentally or bodily illness, in that case the other party wants to dominate that mental distress party and by using his dominant power to obtain the unfair advantages, and in that case that seems to be as a case of undue influence. So what is the effect of undue influence? What is the consequence of undue influence? The agreement is called as a voidable agreement, and that is at the option of the aggrieved party whose consent is so caused by way of undue influence, and the aggrieved party may refund the benefit. So when consent to an agreement is obtained by way of undue influence, the aggrieved party has the right to take or to make the refund of its benefit. If the aggrieved party does not opt to set aside the contract, it works as a valid contract. So when the aggrieved party does not want to offset or to set aside, in that case the contract which is created by way of undue influence, that is called as a valid contract. So there is one example. The picture shows the case of undue influence. Don't worry man, it will grow back. By operation you just execute a deed giving the whole property to me. That means this person uses his dominant power by cutting his hand and said that if you will give the whole property to me, then your hand will grow after certain time. So this is a case of undue influence. That means the superior power used by this person over the inferior party and dominate that party to take the advantages or to take the benefit by using his dominant power, and this shows a case of undue influence. So what is the basic difference between coercion and undue influence? In case of a coercion, that is threat of an offense, but in case of undue influence, the dominant will of other. Second ground, in case of a coercion, this shows physical character, but in case of undue influence, that is moral character. In case of a coercion, it is an intention to enter into a contract, but in case of undue influence, there is an intention to take unfair advantages. The last one is, in case of a coercion is criminal act is involved, but in case of undue influence, no criminal act is involved. So these are the some of the basic difference between coercion and undue influence. Next, that is related to fraud. Fraud, that is defined under section 17 of the Indian Contract Act. It is one of the part relating to free consent. So what is meant by fraud? Fraud means and includes any of the following acts committed by a party to a contract or with his connivance or by his agent with intent to deceive another party thereto or his agent or to induce him to enter into the contract. So in general sense, fraud means one act of cheating the other. So when one party having some intention to cheat the other, then in that case we can say that is a case of fraud. So section 17 of the Indian Contract Act defines if any of the acts is done by the party with an intention to cheat the other party, then that is called as a fraud. So the acts are the suggestion as a fact of that which is not true by one who does not believe it to be true. That means the first case which defines that if any of the suggestion or the false act made by a one party with an intention to cheat the other and any of them does not believe to be true, or how far that is true, anyone cannot believe that, then we can say that false suggestion is an intention to cheat the other. Second case, the active concealment of a fact by one having knowledge or belief of the fact. That means if anyone having involving with a certain concealment and that concealment having some knowledge or belief of the fact, how far that is true or false, then in that case we can say that is also a case of fraud. Then a promise made without an intention of performing it. So if any of the person makes promise for performing certain act or activities, but there is no intention of performing that particular activity, then in that case we can say that person is going to cheat the other, and that is also called as fraud. Any other act fitted to deceive. So when any of the acts done by other party or any of the party and that is directly or closely related to cheat the other, then that is also called as fraud. And the last one is any such act or omission as the law specially declares to be fraudulent. So when the law or the court specially declares that the following acts or any of the acts that is closely related to fraudulent activities or any such act or omission which is related to fraudulent activities, that is called as also fraud. So these are the some of the grounds, the 5 cases. If any of the act is done with an intention to cheat the other, then we can say that, or Indian Contract Act says that is a case of fraud. So when contract is obtained by fraud, in that case the consent is not said to be free. So there is one explanation relating to fraud. Mere silence as to fact likely to affect the willingness of a person to enter into a contract is not fraud, unless the circumstances of the case are such that regard being had to them, it is the duty of the person keeping silence to speak, or unless his silence is in itself equivalent to speech. That means this explanation says that mere silence is cannot declared as a fraud. If any of the party is having in silent position, in that case we cannot say that, or the Contract Act, Indian Contract Act says that is not a case of a fraud. If any act is done closely related to cheat the other, then that is called as fraud, but mere silence is not declared as a fraud. There is some illustration relating to fraud. First example, A sells by auction to B a horse which A knows to be unsound. A says nothing to B about the horse unsoundness. This is not fraud in A. A having some knowledge and to sell the horse and which A knows that is unsound, but he is not aware about that and he is not saying to B about the horse unsoundness. So this is not called as a fraud. B is A's daughter and has just come of age. Here the relation between the parties would make it A's duty to sell or to tell B if the horse is unsound. Then another one is B says to A, if you do not deny it, I shall assume that the horse is sound. A says nothing. Here A's silence is equivalent to speech. So the third case we say that in this position A is silent about the fact. So mere silence, that is also not called as a fraud. A and B being traders enter upon a contract. A has private information of change in price which would affect B's willingness to proceed with the contract, and A is not bound to inform B. So in this case A is not aware about that and A is also not informed or bound to inform B about this case. So there are some essentials that relate to fraud. If a false representation is made, that is called as fraud. If some material fact that is relating to cheating others, that is also called as fraud. Before conclusion of the contract with an intention to induce act, if the contract is not complete and before completion if one of the party induce the other to enter into the contract with an intention to cheat, that is called as fraud. With knowledge of a falsity or without belief its truth or with recklessness, if this type of activities is made under that ground, that is also called as fraud. Other party induced to act upon representation, also called as fraud. Other party relied and deceived, subsequently suffered loss. If there is a case of a cheat and subsequently in this activities that suffered a huge amount of loss, that is also called as a fraud. So what is the consequences of a fraud? If the consent to an agreement is obtained by way of fraud, the consent is not said to be free and the contract is called as a voidable contract at the option of the parties who is defrauded. Until it is avoided, still it is called as a valid. If the contract is not avoided by the other party who is going to be deceived, then in this case that is called as a valid contract. So what are the remedies that relates to fraud? Either rescind the contract or insist on the performance of the condition as if the representation was true, or sue for damages what is made by way of obtaining the fraud or by way of cheating the other party. These are the three remedies that available to fraud, or if the contract is obtained by way of fraud. So these are the some of the grounds: coercion, undue influence and fraud, that we have discussed in today's class, where if this type of a situation arises, the consent is not set to as free consent, and when the consent is not free, in this case the contract is called as a invalid contract. That means the parties to relation with each other, they stands to discharge from each side if the consent is not free. So this is our today's discussion. If you are having any doubt, then you can give your comment in my comment section. Thank you all.